Hello, this is Dr. Hassan Abdullah with the course Web Applications Programming, and the topic which we are covering is authentication. And as per the topic list, this is topic number 12. Now, since this is kind of elaborate topic, so the video is divided into two parts, lecture 12A and lecture 12B. So, in part A, we will look at some of the basics like what is authentication, why it is needed, and what techniques are used very briefly because this is a programming course. And within 12A, we'll start with some coding examples. And in 12B, we will look at some more elaborate coding examples like using one-time passwords and using multiple way authentication and preventing multiple tries and so on. So the code is given for all of them. The code is discussed also, and there are about two Q&A in which very detailed discussion of the process of authentication and logging, which involves multiple forms or multiple PHP pages. So, like all the videos in this course, this video is also using the supplemental website, which is the learning management system www.ezmcq.com/goget personalized learning management system. And it has many features, and some of those features are listed on the screen in front of you, along with the URL where the videos are available so that you know about those features. In a nutshell, it has strong search capability, basic search and advanced search, which is not there in other popular learning management systems, which I would not like to take their name. So you can perform flexible search and you can perform search by fixing the order of the keywords also. For example, data structure unordered versus data structure ordered. So the number of results vary. And of course, the results are also highlighted. And then is the visual disability support. If the user has some visual disability, then the user can set the font size, color, line spacing, and so on, so as to make that person comfortable with the desired environment. So that is not there in many popular learning management systems. And then there is the hierarchy, so the all the content is presented in a very organized manner so as to facilitate your learning. First is the statement. You click on the statement, you see the bullets about that statement, and then you look at the detailed answer about those bullets are explained. And then there could be a diagram if needed, and there are references also. And then of course you can also test yourself. There are practice exams, practice quizzes which are graded, which tells you the correct answer and which also explain the solution to you. And you can take those exams multiple times and it is all recorded. The average is presented, the analysis is done for you, and then the content is designed in such a manner that it works with different types of devices, a tablet or a laptop or a PC or a mobile phone, and even if the mobile phone is rotated. And then of course you can track your progress also, that what you have done, what you have not done, so that you know what needs to be done. And of course that helps in assimilation of knowledge. Now the approach, the learning approach adopted in this course and all the courses which are using this learning management system is the question and answer based approach. So the concepts are presented in the form of a question, and then you are challenged to answer that question. So what is the advantage is it's a proactive approach. So it challenges you, unlike just a passive approach of presenting something and then going into some description and so on. Number one is that advantage. Number two is engaging. It is kind of an interactive approach. The system asks you a question and you come up with the answer, and you look at the explanation, and then you in the process you learn also. And of course this is in an adaptability is there, and because we are directly looking at the real world problems, and those real world problems are presented in the form of questions. And of course it's the critical thinking also, it's not a passive approach. Critical thinking, and we are much better than machines in thinking. So therefore this approach is adopted of thinking, right? challenging you to think. And of course, then there's the advantages of traditional approach also, when facts have to be presented. So this approach which we have adopted here is the best of both worlds. So this is the list of topics which are covered in this course, and we are right here at topic number 12. So topic number 12 is authentication, and within that topic there are 10 Q&As. So the ones which are shown in yellow, these question and answers, which actually is a concept, is covered in 12A, and the next set of 5 Q&A, they are covered in the video 12B, right? And clicking on each of these question and answer displays all the bullets and the description and the references and the diagrams. So now we move on to the supplemental website, and we start with the corresponding Q&A. So we start with the Q&A, in which is every Q&A, as you know, is a concept. So what is authentication in web applications and how it works, or maybe what are the constituents of authentication? So that is what's going to be discussed in this number one question and its answer. And these are the bullets which we'll be covering, right? So what is now, before we, as a matter of fact, move towards authentication, there is one thing which needs to be clarified, which is the difference between authentication and authorization. So authentication confirms who is the user, okay, and authorization determines that is the authenticated user allowed to do what the user is going to do. For example, after logging in, which is authentication, authorization controls whether the user can access specific resources or perform certain actions. So if I am checking my email and I log in, so that is authorization. I'm sorry, that is authentication. Authentication is the process which takes me where the email is present, and authorization is that uh, can I access that email, which since I have been authenticated, so therefore that's my email. So what is the process of authentication? Now it's we'll talk more about it in another Q&A. So basically the process is about verifying the identity of the user. Okay, and when that identity is verified, not just when they are browsing and looking for something, if I go to a newspaper website, when I attempt to access a certain area of the system which requires authentication, then of course is authentication required. So what is the process? It involves submitting credentials. What are the credentials? Credentials like username, like password. This is standard authentication, and this is checked against the stored records, right? And if the records match, if the username matches and the password matches, then the access should be granted. So this is, and of course it is not that straightforward, it involves many things. So as a matter of fact, there is a whole video in topic number 15, in which you basically create a login system for authentication, and it involves number of PHP pages. So what are the authentication methods? What are the authentication methods? So the authentication methods include passwords, they include biometrics. Biometrics are something which is unique to a person, like the fingerprint, like the pattern in the iris, like the voice of a person, normal voice. And it also involves OTPs, one time passwords, and then there are authentication applications also, which may be running on my cell phone or whatever. So more secure systems, okay, use multi-factor authentication, all right, and they combine, in addition to password, like phone numbers or fingerprints, okay, or they may be asking questions, additional questions, and so on. And the what is the purpose? The purpose is to reliably, I'm sorry, the purpose is to verify identity more reliably. It has to be more reliable. That's the purpose. Okay. So what we are doing, we require user credentials. And what are user credentials? This is the piece of information which is required to prove the identity of the user. Usually it's username and password, right? But it can be more also. It could be like asking for the date of birth, the last 4 digits of the social security number, parents' names, or other things also, mother's name. So therefore the credentials must be securely stored. Okay, securely stored where? On your application, where? In the database, not using not in a JSON format or text file, no way. Okay, and that has to be encrypted. Usually it's hashed. Why it's hashed? Because reverse hashing is almost impossible. Of course there are certain ways, and it's stored on the server and it is transmitted safely to prevent unauthorized access or data breaches. That's the way it has to be hashed or encrypted, and it has to be transmitted safely, right? So once the authorization has been once the authentication has been done, so we go to session management. Why we go to session management? Because after authentication, a session is established. It's not automatic. You have to create a session, okay, and you have to assign values to it, to the session variables. So that is in uh, topic number 15. I think it's the second last topic, second last subtopic. Last topic is generating histograms. Or okay. So after authentication, a session is established to maintain the user state. We have already covered what is in session and why we need a session, because proper session handling ensure that the user remains logged in. It's not that you have to log in again and again. Of course you can put a timer which kills the session after a certain time. There is a certain default value also, so the user cannot remain logged in indefinitely, because that's not secure. And why we have that session? Because we would like to prevent session hijacking. Okay, and we have to do all of this, and of course the automatic logout is based upon session timeout after the inactivity is there for a certain time. Okay, so this is how it works. Then we also use authentication tokens. So what are authentication tokens? Like JSON web tokens, JWT. Okay, so that what it does is it represents a user's authenticated session, and they allow stateless authentication. Stateless means that the connection is made, okay, and that's it. So it's not a kind of a permanent connection. So that's stateless authentication by containing encoded user data. Why? Because you want to prevent hijacking, and it is often passed how? Using the API request. Okay, and why? Because you want to ensure and maintain secure access. That's the purpose. That's how it works, right? So authentication tokens is another way, and then is the multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication. I think there are certain examples also. So you will come across within this course. There are examples of multi-factor authentication. So basically, you can add multiple factors to enhance security. So if you add, of course, if you add those multiple factors, it secures, but it can become annoying to the user. So for example, password plus a one-time code sent to a device, that you will be implementing also. This of course reduces the risk of unauthorized access, because that code is sent to the registered email address, right? But even if one factor is compromised, so if one factor is compromised, maybe so the password, or somebody gets hold of your password and your username, right, and they try to attempt to access, right? So this multi-factor authentication is going to send a token, one time code, to your email address, okay, or maybe as a text message. So and then you retype it. So it's difficult to compromise your username, your password, and to compromise your email account and compromise your cell phone, right? So that's multi-factor authentication. So these are all the details which I have discussed. So I would strongly urge you to read all of this, try to understand this. Okay, all the details are here, and of course, if you're interested in more reading, here are the references. Okay, so there's a lot of material to learn. So why is authentication important for web applications? Well, authentication is very important. You go to a bank, say for example, and you would like to withdraw a certain amount, you have to show a photo ID, right? And you want to make a transfer of cash or something, you need a photo ID, okay, and so on. So that is authentication. But why is authentication important for web applications? Because there is no physical presence. The photo ID can be matched with your with the face, okay. So for the web, it is fairly comparatively easier to fake as compared to physical presence, right? So that's the point here. So why authentication is important? Secure user data. Data is something which is very valuable. Okay, and the data about like my emails, they are very valuable. My health record, they are very valuable, and financial bank transactions, anybody's, they are very valuable. So authentication, right, is used to secure the user data, and why there only legitimate users can access their personal or sensitive information, because there is no physical presence. And protect the data, email, as I've already mentioned, health records, okay, because not only for authentication is to protect against identity theft. Identity theft means that somebody uh, takes over your digital identity, right? And of course you don't have that access to that entity anymore. That's the worst case scenario, and things are happening on your behalf, so that needs to be protected. Okay, so if you have strong authentication, only then identity theft can be prevented. Okay, and basically it's somebody is impersonating you. Okay, and how that impersonation takes place is by using valid credentials. And where are those valid credentials? They are in the database. So it's very important that for the web applications, the personal identities are being safeguarded. Safeguarded from what? From being stolen. And when they are stolen, then they get misused, or they are used to gain access to important and critical accounts and services. Services is like what you can do, right? And see, because there's no physical thing, because when you go to a bank and you show your photo ID, okay, and maybe it has your height also and stuff like this, so a person can say, okay, this person doesn't look like to me of height 6 feet, this is like 5.5. But there's no such thing in the web application, in the digital world, right? So that's very critical. And of course, authentication is required to support access control also. What is meant by access control? Who can access which specific features, which specific data, which admin controls. Okay, so authentication authorizes who can do what, right? And based upon that authentication, the users are differentiated based upon their roles. For example, based upon authentication, somebody is a regular user. Based upon authentication, somebody is a moderator or somebody is an administrator. And all of this is based upon the verified identity. So who can do what? That is one of the features why authentication is important, because the application has several features, right? Or several pages, so to say. Of course, a page is a feature. Page means a PHP file, right? And what a person can do or cannot do depends upon the authorization, and that authorization is done through authentication, right? So support access control. Then is enhance user trust. Okay. Now, if I know that my data is secure and I can only access that data, then it builds confidence in me. What confidence? The confidence in the web application. And that encourages me to continue to use that application. And then, of course, I may be also needed or required to share data. And if I have confidence, then I know that I can share this data with whom, and and of course my choice. And of course that increases my engagement with the platform. So when I have the confidence, then only I will use that platform and engage with that platform and go for services and features, right? And last but not the least, it prevents authentication, prevents fraud and malicious activity. Okay. So what are the fraudulent activities which can happen is like account takeover, okay, or fake transactions, or data manipulation, right? Uh, and of course the list goes on. So authentication is the first line of defense against cyber attacks, and that ensures what ensures that the activity on your site is traceable, okay, and of course only verified users can access it. And trust me that whatever is happening and whatever you're doing on a website, every click, mouse click, every movement is being traced, is being tracked, is being logged, right? And that logging, you will be amazed at the level of detail which is being logged. So, so things can be tracked. It's not a big problem. All right. So let's move on. So here are the details. Whatever I have discussed. So here are the details how secures user data and protect against identity theft. So there's a lot of material here, and you can see that all that material is in a very organized manner. So you have the bullets, then you have the description, and then you have the references where all this material came from. So there's a lot of material here for you. So how do you securely store passwords in PHP? What is the purpose? The purpose is to prevent unauthorized access, because the passwords are stored in a database, and it would be very naive and it would be very dangerous to store the passwords unencrypted. Never do that. Okay. So what you can do is then what you can do is there are two levels also. What you can do for encryption, but you should not do it. And then the second is that what you can do for encryption and you should do it, right? So because things are not the way they seem, right? So how do you securely store passwords in PHP to prevent unauthorized access? So you can use password hashing. Hashing you may have studied in data structures, and implement sorted hashing, so you have random numbers. And of course you can use modern hashing algorithms also, which are more secure as compared to plain hashing, and avoid storing plain text passwords without any encryption, and use secure password storage function, which I will discuss here. And the database connection should also be secure, okay, and there should be do not access the passwords a lot, right? So because if you are accessing the password file, then there is more chance of that access being intercepted. So what is password hashing? Use password hashing. What is it? Basically, hashing is basically you have a certain, which you have studied in data structure also, that you have some data, okay, and using that data you generate a key, and that key basically points to the data itself in a nutshell. So in the context of passwords, hashing converts the passwords into strings, and those strings are irreversible. Irreversible means that you generate a string and it's difficult to get the actual uh, the password from which that string was generated. So the what is the objective? The objective is that the original password is cannot be retrieved. Of course, if it cannot be retrieved, then how are you going to log in? So the point is that it can be retrieved, but it's difficult to retrieve. So for this, PHP has a function, uh, password underscore hash, okay, which securely hashes the passwords before storing them. So first, so if you create a password, so before it gets stored in the database, it is hashed, okay, and that password underscore hash function of PHP makes it very difficult for attackers to do a reverse engineering. What is the reverse engineering? To get the original password, which is not that difficult for plain hashing. All right. So implement a salted hashing. So what is salted hashing? So what happens is that some random data is added to the passwords before hashing, and that random data is, since it's random, so if the hashing has to be reversed, so how to get that random data if somebody has a function to break or to do a reverse hashing, okay. So what is the result of this salted hashing is that for the same password the salt can be different. It's a random number. So it means that salted hashing can result in different encrypted results for the same password. So it is more secure. Even identical password result in different hashes. Okay. And actually, the good part is that PHP's password underscore hash automatically sorts the passwords. Right. You don't have to do it. So that basically protects them. Right. Against something which is called as rainbow table attacks, which is not part of this course because this course is not about cybersecurity. And of course, that results in improving the overall security of your system, right? And of course, you should be using modern hashing algorithms. So, what are those modern hashing algorithm means that the ones which are relatively new and they have not been around for a while. It means that they have not been compromised, less likely to be have been compromised, and less likely to be publicly available solutions. So, what are those modern hashing algorithms like bcrypt, like Argon2 or Script, and so on? They are again using hashing, okay? But these are designed to be computationally expensive. The time complexity is very high, right? So what happens is that it slows down the brute force attack. What is brute force attack? That is covered in data structures and algorithms, in algorithm design also. Both courses are available on this web application. Okay. So basically that provides some resistance against the cracking techniques because the processing power has become is fairly cheap now. So brute force so the brute force can be used, but these modern hashing algorithms they make it slow. Okay, they make it slow. And please do not store passwords in plain text. Okay, never store passwords in a readable form because it's possible that the attackers can access the database where you have stored the password, and the plain text passwords are immediately compromised. They are just sitting ducks. Okay, so always store hashed versions so that the password is not, as a matter of fact, it's never exposed if the database is breached. Now the security of the database, right, at a certain level is the responsibility of the hosting service provider. But if you have flaws in your design, then the hosting service provider cannot be held responsible, and they will not take responsibility also. So use secure you use secure password storage functions, right? Which I mentioned that like function like PHP password underscore hash, and then is the password underscore verify to check the hash. And you have to be a great mathematician to write your custom hashing logic. So I strongly you are discouraged to do that. Okay, because those password hash and password verify have been tested, and they have been tested in what you can call they have been battle tested. Okay, and they incorporate the best practices also, and they also have automatic sorting also, and then they have it's not limited to a certain algorithm, so there's selection of algorithms also, so they are very secure. So please don't of course you can make your own also, but it's highly discouraged, but you can do that. So secure the database connections, right? Secure the data. Prevention is better than cure. So how do you secure? Use encrypted connections like SSL, secured socket layer, or like TLS when you connect to your database. And of course, depending upon the application, you may be connecting to your database frequently, more frequently, or less frequently, depending upon the design. So when you have your JavaScript front end and you have your activity taking place at the front end, then you have less connectivity with the database. Okay. Connectivity mean you do an access. You run a select statement. Select statement. Of course, select displays the results to you. Then you have update also. You have insert also, and the list goes on. So basically, what I'm asking you is that ensure database credentials are not hard coded in the publicly accessible files. So your username, password, and database name should not be in your page, but they should be in a folder, and that folder should have a file, and the file contains the contents. And to secure your folder where you have that file, put an index file there which points to your main page, so that if somebody just types in is taken to the. So this practice you should do in every folder. There should be a index.php or index.html file which redirects to the main page, so that people cannot view the contents of that file. I'm sorry, of that folder. And finally, what you should do is to limit access to the passwords. Okay, less access, more secure. So the restrict access to password data in the code and in the database also. You should only go there for essential systems operations or essential roles. Okay, and those roles which interact with the password fields, right? And it is a good practice that you don't name the column where the password is stored as password. Something else can also be there, because it's fairly obvious the password is there in the password column. So you should be doing something which is called as the principle of least privilege. Apply it. Okay, and that will minimize the exposure of your passwords. Okay, and it will minimize the potential misuse. So you should be considering all of these things. And whatever I have spoken about, let me just clear this. All right, no, it's not clear yet. Just hold on for a second, please. Yeah, now it's clear. Okay, so whatever I have briefly mentioned, it is discussed in details here, right? And here's the some code is also here. Password strength checker, right? So you load this code into a PHP page, run it, and it's going to tell you, right, that what is the strength of the password. And here the logic is given here, right? So it is going for you can see this going for uppercase and lowercase, and then the digits also, and some okay counting also using special characters also. So and of course the length is checked here also. So you should be implementing this because your project, the semester project, consists of having a login authentication system, which consists of quite a few number of pages. Quite a few mean not a single page, more than a single page. So we have spoken about the password hash and the password underscore verify. So what they really are? What are they really? Okay, so let's take a look at it. So we will look at password hash. We will look at password verify and how they are used. Okay. So what is password underscore hash, which I have mentioned number of times? So it's a function that securely hashes what plain text password, okay, and uses some strong hashing algorithms like bcrypt or argon 2, okay. That's one thing. The other thing is that it automatically generates a salt. And what is the benefit? That salt produces a hash, right? And that hash results in different encrypted passwords for identical passwords in plain text. And that then you will store it in a database, right? Using an insert command. And then basically what happens is that your password, encrypted password, is protected from exposure, and it is difficult to reverse engineer. I'm not saying it is impossible, it's difficult to reverse engineer. Then we have what is called as the password verify. So what password verify does, it checks whether a plain text password, okay, matches a previously hashed password, right? Because if they don't match, then it cannot proceed further. So what you're going to do is that the password which you enter or you input, it will compare it to the stored hash, right? And it will verify the identity without decrypting the password, okay, without decrypting the password. And what happens that it ensures secure authentication, and then the login is allowed. So what you should be doing, you should be doing that secure usage. What does it means? That use your password underscore hash to securely store passwords, and password underscore verify to authenticate the users when they are doing the login. And well, avoid manual sorting, okay, and store your hashes in a secure database. Why? So that PHP is up to date to benefit from the improvements of these functions. Remember that if the security of your application is compromised, or the identity is stolen, okay, then a lot of damage can happen. All right. So one has to be careful about it. Okay. So now is now let me close this first. Okay. Just hold on, please. All right. So as before, here are the details, right? And version of PHP used to be used, and everything is written here. So you should read all of this stuff, okay? And secure usage, and the code which I've shown before. So this is the password. I'm my apologies, not readable. I'll try to fix it. So user password was my secret 123 exclamation, and you can see it's a very long hashed password. And then the attempt was made to log in, and invalid password. Password is correct. Access granted. So this is the kind of messages you will get based upon what you have coded here in this PDF file. So now we move on to some interesting stuff, which is how to implement a login system using PHP in MySQL, okay, and what it is supposed to do: securely validate user credentials. So this is going to help you in your semester project also, and more detail and a working example is given in topic number 15. uh, the code is there, but you still have to do work also. You still have to work also. So now we implement a login system using PHP and MySQL database. and it is expected to securely validate the user credentials. And wherever authentication is used, you will find this Q&A very useful. And so, of course, this is also part of the semester project, and this is also covered second last topic, subtopic 15, which is implementing dynamic application. So let's first look at the bullets, or the number of steps. So there are quite a few steps here, and we can see that there are about 9 steps here. And of course, one has to understand them, and the details are given below. So first look at the bullets. So first of all, set up the database for user credentials. Now this database for user credentials, right? This database can have you can have a table by the name of users or students or whatever is convenient for you, and whatever goes with the application domain. And of course, it has to have some of the corresponding fields also, like ID, the username, and the email address, and of course, you are going to use the password hash function, which we have discussed before. And you should also ensure that the data types are matching, right? So because this password hash, this can be a very long alphanumeric field, so it should be there, proper data types. And you should be using the proper constraints also. Constraints means that, for example, if there are relationships between, okay, let proceed, then we'll talk about them. And so this is how we start. Okay, so the ensure that the password field is long enough, so that because the thing is that if the password field is not long enough, what's going to happen is that your password is going to get truncated. And if it gets truncated, then when you verify it, it's maybe it's correct, but it's not going to get verified. So please check these things. All right. So then you need to create the user registration form, right? So for the user registration form, it can be designed as an HTML form, and using that form, you're going to collect the user information. What kind of user information? I'll show you a picture also, such as the username, the email address, and the password, and other information if it's required. Okay, and now it's going to require client and server side validation. So what is the client side validation? Client side is of course that you input a valid email address and you input a valid password. And the server side validation is that you basically are not using a registration or a username that has already been used. So that validation is not going to come from the client. That validation is going to come from the server side. Okay. And of course, password we've already discussed. So when you are done with this HTML form, right? Then we need to create the password, and that has to be hashed. So for that purpose, we'll use the PHP's password underscore hash function, and it automatically solves the password which is proposed by the end user. Okay, and what it will do, it's going to protect against attacks. What kind of attacks? You can search for about like rainbow tables, right? And this is going to ensure that your stored password is unique. Okay, because if it's unique, then it's basically identical passwords, identical text passwords are going to be represented by different encrypted passwords or hash passwords. So it is going to be unique. Even if so that I've already explained to you. Okay. So once you are done with this, right, then when this issue is resolved, then you are going to store your user data in the database. Okay, once the validation has been done and everything, and you have a username that has not been used before, So then using the SQL insert command, the username and the email address and the salted hash password is going to be stored in the table. That table is the users table, whatever the name is, the students table. Okay. And this is going to be stored using SQL prepared statements. Now you'll be wondering what is meant by SQL state prepared statements. These are the statements that prevent SQL injection attacks. What are SQL injection attacks? That we've already discussed. Okay, and how they are prepared, because the query logic is separated from the user input. Okay, so we are preventing the injection attack. Injection attack means that things go into the database engine through a text box which were not supposed to go there, and they basically are executed and creates all sorts of problems. So we would like to prevent this. So once we have the registration, okay, and we have successfully gone through the client end validation and the server end validation, and the registration has been successful, then we need to log in. Okay, and to log in we need to have a login form. Now this login form can be generated or created or built using HTML. Okay, and it can be very simple form, which just you enter your username, and that username could be your email address, and then you enter your password, and there's a submit button. So what this form is going to do is that it is going to post it is going to post to a PHP script for processing. Okay, and what that PHP script is going to do is going to authenticate the entered credentials, which cannot be done by JavaScript or HTML. JavaScript doesn't have access to the database. Okay, and so that is going to authenticate. What is authentication? That we've already discussed. We have been discussing this authentication. It's going to match the username and the password. Okay, and when that authentication has been successful, then what's going to happen? Retrieve and validate the user credentials. Okay, then again we have the SQL prepared statements, right, to prevent SQL injection attack. And what those statements are going to do is going to retrieve the hash password from where? From the database. For what? For the username, which could be the email address. And if a matching record exists, okay, matching, how do you know it's matching? Matching is based upon the username. And if there is no username, then generate an error message. Okay, user does not exist. So if the username matches, then proceed and verify the password. Okay, using the secure functions. So all right. So now we need to verify the password using the password verifier. So the password which is entered by the user, it is compared with the hashed password which is in the database. Okay, and this function, what it's going to do is going to ensure safely. Okay, and and do the verification without exposing the original password. Okay, without exposing the original password, because if the original password is exposed, somebody can uh, uh, try to steal the identity also. So when all the things match, the username matches, the password matches, okay, then the person is allowed to log in. And with that successful login, right, the PHP session underscore start command is executed. The session is started, and we have a session variable for that user, and that session variable is user specific. So there can be multiple users logged in at the same time, but they have different session variables. And what they do is that these variables maintain the state of the user, different users, multiple users across the relevant pages. Okay, And what it does, it allows the control for the logged in users. So there is no conflict. Okay. So if there are different users based upon their different rights, and those rights may or may not be common or may be the same, but they only are able to do what they're supposed to do, not more than that. Okay. So, and of course, if even if they're doing the same thing, for example, even say maybe they perform a search, and they perform a search and the form for the search is same, everything is same in terms of the structure, and they select different radio buttons or check boxes to perform the search on the same database, they will get the results based upon their search criteria. Okay, why? Because of the session variables. Otherwise, it's a disaster. Okay, and then finally, what do we have? Implement logout functionality. So when the users are done with what they wanted to do, or maybe they are done with based upon the timeout. Okay, so there has to be a logout script. Okay, and that logout script destroys the session. There's a session underscore destroy, and it unsets the session variables. And remember, this cannot be done. I've shown you also at the client side. You can log out, you can clear the history, you can do whatever you want to do. I've shown this to you because these session variables are at the server end. So unless you do destroy the session or unset, those session variables are not going to go away. Okay, and you have to create a logout page also. You have to have a logout, because when you do the logout, it redirects right to a certain page. It could be the login page, it could be the home page, it could be any other page which you want to do, and then it's going to complete the task which you started. So that's all for this set of Q&A, and then we move on to the next set of Q&A for this topic of authentication.